Hey guys, I just wanted to offer just a quick cautionary tale on this episode as well. And I apologize that this is several weeks that we've had some sensitive content. And while I think the vast majority of you are adults that listen to this, you may be driving down the road and have a child, but listening in the car. We don't want to offend anyone. But the realities are, as they were when we talked with Mark Sorsby a couple of weeks ago. This week's topic is about broken people, and we live in a broken world. And part of that, the way that brokenness manifests itself, is in addictions, and particularly this week and the next week, we will be talking about pornography addiction. It is an increasingly sensitive issue, an increasing problem. People ask, what's this got to do with church planting? This has plenty to do with church planting. When you are ministering, when you're planting a church, the likelihood that you're going to encounter this are higher in a church plant because of the people that you attract. You're seen as a open community as opposed to a closed community. And so that is why people who are broken tend to be more attracted to church plants. That's not a bad thing. The church is a hospital for the sick, as they say. And of course, we are supposed to, when you're doing church planting, you're going to be in the community much more. And the likelihood that you'll probably be ministering to 10 times more people outside of your church than you will inside a church when you're doing a church plant, because you're just missional. And you understand that God is sending us. So, again, today's topic is about pornography. Our guest, Bob Hunter, Dr. Bob Hunter, does use language related to pornography. And so we just want to kind of give you that warning there. I hope you have a fantastic day. Like and subscribe, if you will. And just a reminder that my book and Desmond's book is available at Amazon or anywhere you buy books online. Or you can also go to book.revitalizingtoplant.com and get it for a discount. Have a great day. Thanks for listening. Again, if you'd like and subscribe, we have a lot of listeners, but we need people to subscribe and review it as well. Thanks.
And they will be traumatized with graphic sexual images at a very early age. It's what we call PSR. You know what PSR stands for? Pornographic style relationships. Because their education comes from graphic sexual images. And their minds are conditioned to think in terms of, this is how relationships work. This is what she wants. She wants that aggressiveness. She wants that particular sex act. When in fact, that's not the case. But they're so conditioned and their minds are pornified to the point that they will act out. I call it porn's worst case scenario. Young men that are so conditioned with pornography that eventually what happens is they will act out. They will act out because, they continue to run with the fantasies and they have this appetite that grows for more graphic sexual content.
Marcus Aurelius said, "What we do in life echoes through eternity." What is your life echoing through eternity? Welcome to Echoes Through Eternity with Dr. Jeffrey Skinner. Our mission is to inspire, engage, and encourage leaders from across the globe to plant missional churches and be servant leaders. So join us and hear the stories of servant leaders reverberating lives as God echoes them through eternity. Brought to you by Missional Church Planting and Leadership Development and Dynamic Church Planting International.
So what's the third component there? So we talked about the emotional healing. What is the third component there?
So then we have to move to measures of accountability. So accountability is a big component of the recovery journey, and you cannot skip this step. Okay. So there are no shortcuts when it comes to accountability. And so thank God for Covenant Eyes and other software programs that can filter and that, provide device accountability. Because if guys aren't locking down their devices and using accountability software in conjunction with an accountability partner, they almost have no chance. And it's no kidding. I mean, I've had guys come to me, well, I've tried everything and I just can't beat this. I can't overcome it. And I'll say, well, wait a minute. Have you locked down your device? Have you deleted apps? What are you doing on social media? Do you have any accountability software? No. Well, okay, then you haven't done everything. Okay, this is a very simple step. You need to download the software and have that accountability built in. And there are other forms of accountability, whether it be meeting people in person or you're part of a healing group. And that's vitally important as well. Maybe it's Celebrate Recovery. Maybe it's some other type of healing group where there is weekly accountability. So accountability, big component of the recovery journey. And it's just a step that you cannot skip. There are no shortcuts here. But and accountability can look a lot of different ways. I'm certainly an accountability partner to a pastor that has had, struggles in this department. And so we talk about this, and I receive his covenant eyes, his partner. So I receive the reports. I see the screenshots. I know where he's been on the internet. And look, if guys are struggling with pornography and they don't have accountability and they're not locking down their devices, they don't have a chance. They do not have a chance. So this is a big one.
Yeah. And I'll say this too. Now, you may or may not agree with this, but your spouse is not your accountability partner.
No. In fact, there's a lot to be said here when we've learned this over the years. No, she doesn't need to have a play-by-play, report or rundown of all of your activities. That's between you and your accountability partner. In fact, when guys first come to me and they say, I've blown it, I'm trapped, I'm stuck, I'm in bondage. And if they're married, I'll say, okay, what I don't want you to do is to go home and spill this and tell your wife and reveal it all. Don't do that. Give this some time. We're going to develop a plan of recovery, and we're going to talk about some ways in which you can get set free. And then at the appropriate time, you can present this to your wife, say, yes, I have sinned. I have been addicted to pornography, but this is what I have done. And this is my plan going forward, because it gives reassurance and it helps heal that betrayed heart. So there's the right way to approach this and the wrong way to approach this. And we don't want guys to just go and blow up the marriage. I had a porn addiction, and man, now I'm beginning to act out. And this is, you don't want to traumatize, is the wisdom on this. And this is something that Pastor Ted so beautifully taught. Like, we'll help you develop a plan first. But again, sometimes guys are just getting busted. And then what do you do? She walks in on him and he has things up on his laptop or his device, or you get busted at work. I mean, I know guys that are IT managers and they're busting employees. And what are you going to do? You got to go home and you got to face the facts. So accountability, make you or break you on the recovery journey. And it's a good thing. It can be done redemptively and gracefully. And it should be. That's a part of what we do in the local church.
Yeah. And we men, because we process data, process information so differently than women, I think sometimes it's the guy scratches his head. Well, it was just on a screen, so what's the big deal? Why does she feel so betrayed? It was just, I didn't mean anything by it. And that'll bring us to how women are connected to pornography. It's more just kind of a preview, more relationally oriented for them. So they're much more likely to act out. When I say act out, have multiple partners, have affairs, things like that. And they tend to want to chat where guys just kind of want to look. But for them, it's the equivalent of a full-blown affair for the woman because of the way they connect. They don't understand just a visual connection. They think it's an emotional connection there. And that's why it feels like such a betrayal to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for a lot of guys, the porn thing is all about the orgasm. And for women, it's not just that, it's other things attached to it. And that's where, porn lies to us, because it's all about the orgasm. It has nothing to do with the actual relationship itself. It's, porn kills love. is a really good way to look at this.
Yeah.
Well,
this is the second episode that we're going to put a PG rating on.
yeah. Well, I was going to say up front, if small children are in the room or nearby or within earshot, probably shut it down.
Yeah.
I'll
make sure I record a warning.
This has been one of my, again, this has gotten me into trouble, and I have suffered criticism for speaking out on this topic. And at times I've made the mistake of being too graphic, and that's been problematic. So I've had to learn to dial it down and make sure the audience is appropriate. But anyway, moving right along here, we've got the fourth component, which is spiritual devotion. The recovery process is it's a spiritually transformative journey for a lot of guys. It really is the sanctifying of the soul, the purification of the heart. Now, this is where some Christian leaders put all of their eggs in one basket. Their strategy is basic to defeat porn, to overcome the addiction is basically amounts to ramped up Bible study and prayer. We need to get men delivered. We just need to get them delivered. So we need to pray. We need to anoint them. And I think there's value in that. I absolutely do. In fact, the reports that I'm getting from the Asbury revival firsthand are this: young men are confessing to pornography, and it's happening on a big scale. That is wonderful. We want to see spiritual devotion, confession, and deliverance. But here's the problem with that, Jeff. For a lot of churches and Christian leaders, they put all of their eggs in this one basket, and they neglect education. They neglect accountability. They neglect emotional healing. Well, guess what? I want men to be delivered too. And the spiritual component is vitally important. We need to break the bondage through prayer and devotion to God. But we also need to embrace some of these other things that God has ordained. Now, I've seen many guys fail here. They say, I read the Bible, I went to the altar, I had just real breakthrough in prayer, and I just know I'm delivered from this. And 6 months later, guess what? They're not delivered because they didn't have the courage, or, they didn't have the support to assemble some of the other pieces that are needed in the recovery journey. So I'm thrilled that young men are devoted to God and the Bible and the Holy Spirit and deliverance, but you may still end up with a habit. And we need to make sure that these other vital areas of recovery are addressed. So spiritual devotion and deliverance is a big component, and churches need to be about that. But again, if there's stigma, and this is off limits, your pastor doesn't want to talk about it, Christian leaders in the church really don't want to deal with it, then nothing is happening. I mean, literally in a lot of churches, absolutely nothing. They're flat effect. Nothing happens when it comes to addressing the issue of pornography, sexual addiction, and very, very sad. But for the churches that have had the courage and boldness to step up, in many cases, they put all of their eggs in this one basket.
Yeah.
Christian leaders everywhere are talking about Revitalize to Plant. Written by Drs. Desmond Barrett and Jeffrey D. Skinner, Revitalize to Plant is more than a philosophical approach to church planting and revitalization. The authors have experienced the crucible of leading in the trenches of ministry. It's gritty, practical, and most of all, recasts our vision and understanding of church planting and revitalization. Revitalize to Plant, now available on Amazon or revitalizetoplant.com. That's revitalizetoplant.com, the last resource you'll need to bring new life to your church.
It's been a while back. I heard a statistic, and I don't know how valid it still is or not, because we've become so much more aware of it. But used to, you'd go into the hotels, and they would have pay-per-view channels and things like that you could purchase. And I heard a conversation statistic that said that when the Christians came to town, that the hotels made the most money off their pay-per-view channels, because
they had access.
They get access.
They had access.
To it there.
Yeah,
it's sad, and so I mean it affects everybody with no exception. When I ran my IT company, when we started out with the PCs, This is brand new. This is when technology was new. It was before tech porn was even as prevalent as it is today. It was before you had all the various websites that are out there that you can go to, before your TikToks and everything. And so pastors didn't know about cache on browsers. And so they'd bring their PC in, and I had employees working for me, their computer broke. And they're like, yeah, the computer is just not working for some reason. And inevitably it's covered with viruses. And the reason it's covered with viruses is you get in there and they've been to some not so good sites. And these were pastors a lot of times that were bringing their computers in. Again, this is 25 years ago. This is before the advent of everything that we have today, before you had all the spam filters and everything. And basically you just had AOL it was dial up internet. And so, high speed internet is pictures in, now it's video and everything that goes with that. So it affects everybody. So the point being is shame, to be shamed by it doesn't do any good. That's the trap of Satan, is he shames you into hiding. That's the sin that Adam and Eve had. It was that they were hiding from God. God's not going to heal you as far as you're hiding. The accountability portion is where that comes in, and confessing that to a friend, and get that spiritual component in there as well. And don't just, over spiritualize it. That's what we tend to do sometimes in Christian circles, is over spiritualize it and say, that God can do this. Look, my wife's father was an alcoholic. Now we're talking 60 years ago. He went to the altar and he prayed. And when he got up from the altar, he testified he never had another craving for alcohol or cigarettes when he got up from that altar. We're not denying the power of God to miraculously deliver someone from this thing, but more often than not, it is a partnership with God, which God gives us other mentors and friends and pastors and loved ones around us to help in that journey, as opposed to just an instantaneous deliverance.
Yeah, I don't trust it. I don't. When guys, testify that, went to the altar, had a spiritual breakthrough. I mean, it was just this powerful moment with the Lord. Well, I believe that you did. I really do. But I also want to support you and make sure that you have the tools that you need to succeed long term. How can we support you and sustain that deliverance? So there's real wisdom in that. And sometimes I think the church just hasn't been, very attentive to some of those needs. And also I would just say, as far as online access, especially as it pertains to young men, if you have a teenager and he has Twitter, if he lifts the sensitivity filter on Twitter, it's basically a Pornhub channel. Okay. Yes. You lift the sensitivity filter on Twitter and it's basically a Pornhub channel. On TikTok, I'm not on TikTok anymore. I used to post video content there, but it's a cesspool over there. Anyway, as far as TikTok is concerned, as soon as you consume any content that is sexual in nature, where there's innuendo or suggestive things that are said, and supposedly they're supposed to have community guidelines that enforce that. But believe me, a lot of stuff gets by the filter. As soon as you consume it, the algorithm picks up on what you're consuming and gives you more of it. And before long, your feed is filled with sexual content. Young men. We're talking young men that have TikTok. I would not have my teenagers, no way, you are not going to be on TikTok. Now, my boys are grown now. But nonetheless, just so parents understand what's at stake, unsupervised usage of social media platforms is tantamount to failure. And they're going to get a sexual education like no other. And they will be traumatized with graphic sexual images at a very early age. It's what we call PSR. You know what PSR stands for? Pornographic style relationships. Because their education comes from graphic sexual images. And their minds are conditioned to think in terms of, this is how relationships work. This is what she wants. She wants that aggressiveness. She wants that particular sex act, when in fact that's not the case. But they're so conditioned and their minds are pornified to the point that they will act out. I call it porn's worst case scenario. young men that are so conditioned with pornography that eventually what happens is they will act out. They will act out because, they continue to run with the fantasies, and they have this appetite that grows for more graphic sexual content. And it does lead to acting out, whether that is acting out in subtle ways or they're engaging in physical contact and it's aggressive in nature. And they're basically, in subtle ways, they're acting out what they've seen. It's very, very sad, very sad. So just a word of caution there. But let's hit that last point there, and then we'll wrap it all up and put a bow on it. And again, if you're listening out there, thank you for being patient with us. And we really hope that this is helpful. But our goal is to equip you and empower you as a leader. The final component of this multi-pronged attack plan that I've spoken of is actual willpower. And it really comes down to this: is how bad does he want to be free? How bad do you want it? Now, I've known guys that have struggled for years and finally cracked the code and experience freedom from sexual bondage. So what made the difference? I often wonder, what made the difference here? And sometimes it's just as simple as they finally resolved to get free. And it was sheer willpower. And sheer willpower does count for something, because we know that, because Jesus touched on this in John chapter 5 when he asked the question, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed? How bad do you want out? And, the fact of the matter is, Jeff, a lot of guys that are consuming pornography actually don't like it. But because of the highly addictive nature of it, they feel totally stuck with the problem. And that's where the pain point enters in. And oftentimes with guys, when the pain level gets high enough, then suddenly they're motivated to do something. And I've seen it in guys. They maybe stumbled across some pornography that was really aggressive, really demeaning towards women, or just really disgusting. And it just literally breaks them. I've had them describe it to me. And then that's the motivation they need to get help. If your motivation is you got busted, oops.
Yep, there you go.
Oops,
there you go. That's where
she busted you. You got busted at work. If that's your motivation, oftentimes not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough. You have to want it. You have to want it so badly. And when you do, the guys that really, really want it, they may stumble. They may stumble with accountability measures. They may stumble through the emotional healing process, but they won't give up. They won't give up until they're healed. And that's the beauty of sheer willpower, just wanting it bad enough. And so this component is, we should not underestimate the power of the will. And certainly Jesus, had weighs in here heavily. Do you want to be healed? Do you want it?
Yeah. And part of that means avoiding your triggers, a willingness to avoid those triggers, a willingness to subscribe to the accountability, the willingness to put the safety measures of software on your laptop or on your desktop computer or on the phone. I mean, and they have it for all three platforms now. That's what we're talking about. Willpower here is it's just, we're not saying white knuckle it. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying that it's just a matter of willpower and you're breaking free. Don't hear step number 5 and forget spiritual awakening, a spiritual resolution, the spiritual depth, and connecting to God, the Bible study, all prayer, all those things are important. The Christian community, accountability is absolutely important. You've got to have that accountability. But and so all this feeds into that willpower that you're talking about. Is just a willingness to let go, a willingness to let go of our power and our control. And a lot of times that's where the studies I read on pornography, they relate to 2 things besides medicating ourselves. They relate to fear of intimacy. And so it's easier to, have a picture or a video or whatever, as opposed to being vulnerable. And so that relates to control and power. So you've got the control and you've got the power as long as you're doing that and it's just a solo activity. Or even if you bring your partner into it, that's still you guiding that activity. You still have that power and control. And I'll just say this, that on the other side of it is a freedom that and a return to the intimacy that they have with their partners. Is just, I hear the guys' testimonies all the time about how their relationship was renewed, their marriage was on the verge of a breakup, and they got free. And just the return to intimacy with their wives, their spouse, and a partner, because it does affect women as well. 17% of all women confess to, not, excuse me, 19% confess to using it. 17% confess to using it at work. Anyway, it's such a great topic, Bob, and I will put a PG rating on this for those ahead of time, just to let people know so they're not shocked.
Do you want to grow and multiply your church? Perhaps you need help launching a new church, or even a Christian ministry like a coffee shop or something else. Do you find yourself struggling just to recruit volunteers week after week? Is your church in need of new life? Maybe you're fresh out of seminary and the organizational leadership called you with an opportunity and you realize that opportunity needs a fresh start. Or perhaps you're a church planter. You've been going it alone for a while now and you're exhausted, lonely, and doubting your call. We understand. Church planting, launching a new church is hard. Missional Leadership Coaching is here to help. Go to missionalleadershipcoaching.com and click on our free offer to get started today. That's missionalleadershipcoaching.com. We look forward to helping you.
Yeah, so just to wrap it up and put a bow on it, I don't want to leave too many loose ends here. So if you do have the off-the-scale willpower that we like to see in men, but you don't have education and accountability, your chances of experiencing freedom dim. Suddenly, your chances are not as bright to get free. Same thing. If you have intense times of devotion and disciplined prayer, but you don't have the emotional healing and education, that's a setup for eventual failure. So, same thing. If you have education and even some accountability and emotional healing, but you don't have the personal motivation and willpower to give it up, that's probably not going anywhere either. So my theory is this: men who recover and crack the code have assembled enough of the components. They've been able to put it together just enough to beat this thing. And for every guy, it's different. Some need more spiritual devotion and deliverance. Others need more education and accountability. Others need more emotional healing and therapy. It's always a unique combination. I never know exactly how, men are set free until, they tell their story. And it's fascinating to me because these guys all have a different story, and it's different levels of each of the following components, and even some stuff on the periphery, like supportive family. Maybe they had to change their work environment. Some guys just have to change their work environment because it's so X-rated that it's better for them to just move on and save their soul than stay in that environment. So there's other things on the periphery, but it's a synthesized solution. It's just so rare that I hear a guy say, I prayed real hard, I had a spiritual breakthrough, and bam, I was set free forever. It does happen, but really rare, really rare. So I hope this whole conversation has broadened our perspective and that we'll maybe integrate more completely and bring about a better solution for the church that ultimately yields men who are set free and an asset to the local church instead of being a liability. Because guys that are addicted to pornography in your church, they're actually a liability to you. They are a liability to you because you never know when they might act out. You never know when the affair's coming. You don't know. So we need to have men who are set free and women who are set free. Church has been one-dimensional for too long, Jeff.
Yeah, I agree.
We have to move beyond. We have to move beyond that and be a bigger part of the solution.
Yeah, I did some ministry down in Columbus, Georgia, and Fort Benning. That's a big military base down there. You would be shocked at how rampant pornography is within the military.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe not shocked, but it's a huge issue within the military. And this was early in our marriage, Fort Benning Victory Drive is down there near the base. It was littered with prostitution. You had strip clubs. You had again, this is prior to the internet. And so you had all that down there on Victory Drive. We had a mayor that came in and basically cleaned it all up. And it's great that it got cleaned up, but then it went underground. And so, if you have a soldier, if you have a husband who's in the military, pray for them, understand that they're surrounded by this stuff every day. And it's an unspoken issue, but it is. Just because we don't talk about it doesn't mean it
And there's a couple
exist.
of go-to sources that I would kick out to Christian leaders and pastors. One is the Conquer series by Dr. Ted Roberts. Very well done, communicates very well to men. It's a DVD series. You can access it online. And then Doug Weiss, Dr. Doug Weiss, Weiss, has a series called Clean. And he also deals with the sexual intimacy in the context of marriage and healing and recovery from that. So those are kind of two of my go-to sources.
Good.
If you're looking, and then puredesire.org has some online accountability groups that can be real helpful to men. Right. So
and I'll make sure I link
empowered.
Those in our comments. I'll put all that in our comments and everything. Bob, I almost called you Doug. Not sure who Doug is, but
man.
Yeah, just the cobwebs of old age, I guess, in here. But great having you again.
We didn't beat the pork addiction. I mean, what happened to that discussion? But maybe we made some progress on porn addiction.
That's it. The food addiction is a separate issue for a separate time.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's one of those allowable sins within the church, right? I mean, we can talk about addiction.
We can
don't talk about my food. Yeah,
don't talk about my food. All right,
Bob. And we'll turn this into 2 episodes, by the way, not just one, because it went an hour. And so we'll turn this into 2, and that'll be good. All right. Thanks, Bob.
All right.
Have a great day. I want to remind everyone, too, that Revitalize to Plant, Reshaping the Established Church to Plant Churches is available at on Amazon or anywhere, Whiffenstock, anywhere you want to buy books, Books A Million, or you can go to book.revitalizetoplant.com. And there you can get a discount on for $15. I think it lists for $19 on Amazon. But I'll even pay the shipping through the USPS, United States Postal Service. I'll pay the shipping if you want to purchase it directly from me. Again, that's $15. It doesn't matter either way. But revitalizedplant.com. And you all, it's been great being here. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe, if you will. A lot of people listen to this. We get about 2,000 downloads per episode. We're in the top 17% of all podcasts, which is great. This is just a testimony to people wanting to hear the story of God, and all that is good. But I'd encourage you to subscribe and then share it with your friends, because the subscriber base is what will help us get these voices out there, right? I've told you this is not about me. It cost me money to produce this podcast. I paid over $1,000 last year just in podcast promotion, production, and the tools to edit, the hosting of the podcast is not free. All these things, I'd encourage you to please like and subscribe, if you will. Thanks a lot. You can be a co-creator with God by helping to echo our guest voices. Share our episodes with friends and family and on your own social media accounts. Give us positive 5-star reviews. The more positive reviews we have, the more visibility we have, and the more voices that are echoed through eternity. We often invite guests who are serving faithfully year after year, often in anonymity in their respective roles in ministries. God sees them, and the reality is for a good kingdom leader, that's enough. We do not do what we do for the accolades of humanity. We do it because we're called by God. But I believe that God uses people like you and I to continue those reverberations and echo them throughout eternity. You can partner with God by liking, subscribing, writing a quick positive 5-star review, and again, sharing those voices with friends and family and on your own social media accounts. Those reviews will eventually lead to other guests who have larger platforms that have more listeners, who will then in turn listen to the show. And again, it further echoes those voices, which is the whole vision of the Echoes Through Eternity podcast here, is to continue echoing those voices that God is echoing through eternity there. So like and subscribe and review us if you would. We'd appreciate that greatly.